A possible default in the United States, which may be caused by the refusal of Congress to raise the debt ceiling, will bring a huge victory for China. This opinion was expressed by White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. She commented on a letter sent to President Joe Biden by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who urged the head of state to intensify negotiations with Republicans to raise the borrowing limit. Congress is constitutionally required to resolve the debt limit issue, as it did 3 times under the previous administration without condition. Business leaders and economists have warned that the threat of default puts the livelihoods of American small businesses, retirees, and working families at risk, as well as a huge win for China, and recent events underscore the need for Congress to resolve the debt limit issue as soon as possible. It's time for Republicans to stop playing games, pass a clean debt limit bill, and stop threatening our economic recovery, she added, commenting on Republicans' decision to come forward with conditions under which Democrats would agree to support raising the nation's debt ceiling, now set at $31.4 trillion. According to the spokeswoman, Biden welcomes separate from the national debt ceiling consultations about the country's financial future. She stressed that the president released his draft budget for the next fiscal year, and Republicans have not done so despite the head of state's request. All we've heard from them is a list of catastrophic cuts to law enforcement and border security, as well as proposals to take healthcare away from Americans and raise the price of healthcare and childcare. All this to pay for their tax handouts to super rich people and corporations. In reality, their proposals don't reduce the deficit at all. The United States administration has recently urged Congress to raise the debt ceiling of the national debt, which is now set by law at $31.4 trillion. The Republican Party, which now controls the House of Representatives, has traditionally been skeptical about raising the debt limit and favors cutting government spending. United States Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen earlier sent a letter to McCarthy in which she said that the United States will reach the debt ceiling on 19 January. In this regard, the head of the Treasury urged lawmakers to take swift action to raise it. As noted by Yellen, the Treasury Department will have to take emergency measures after reaching the debt ceiling to prevent the default of the United States. According to the Secretary, there will be enough cash and emergency measures until about the beginning of June. Yellen considers timely action by Congress to raise the national debt ceiling or to suspend it to be vital. As she warned, otherwise, there would be irreparable damage to the United States economy. At the end of 2021, Biden signed a law that raised the ceiling of the national debt by $2.5 trillion up to $31.4 trillion. Thus, a potential default was prevented. As Yellen said, then if the law was not approved, there could be a shortage of funds needed to finance the federal government. United States government debt reached a record high. As the New York Times noted, the current level was reached several years earlier than anticipated. This was the result of the trillions of dollars spent by the United States to fight the pandemic, including $5 trillion in expanded unemployment benefits, financial support for small businesses, and stimulus payments backed by borrowed money. How does a United States default threaten the rest of the world? The global financial system is based on the notion that the United States will never default on its dollar-denominated obligations because it prints them itself as much as it needs to. United States government debt is the world's main reserve asset, with nearly 60% of the savings held in dollars, 20% in euros, 5% in yen and pounds, and 3% in yuan. A default would have serious and lasting financial and economic consequences. We don't even need a default itself. The mere threat of default would collapse markets and hit household incomes. Financial markets will lose faith in the United States. The dollar will fall and stocks will collapse. The United States rating will surely be downgraded, and credit will become more expensive. The Council of Economic Advisors predicted in the midst of the previous debt ceiling controversy 2 years ago. This time, it will be even worse. The White House economists warned because in the absence of the government's ability to borrow, there will be no money for government support to cushion the effects of the crisis, as after the financial collapse of 2008 and the COVID pandemic. The recession is not good at all right now. The world has not yet recovered from the COVID crisis. The second largest economy after the United States, China is just beginning to recover, and the third largest European economy is feverish from the energy crisis and Russia's war against Ukraine. The United States has never defaulted, but several times it has been roughly in the current situation where the debt ceiling was reached and Congress refused to raise it. Each time, the ceiling was either raised or suspended before the Treasury ran out of money to pay 100% of the bills. Still, it was not without consequences. In 2011, the battle between Democratic President Barack Obama and the Democratic Senate and Republicans in the House of Representatives dragged on until the last minute. The threat of default was so real that markets panicked and the United States credit rating was downgraded. Default is a much more serious problem than the second known type of United States budget crisis, the so-called shutdown. In this case, Congress simply does not allocate money to fund the budget holders and the bureaucracy is partially shut down. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel and write your opinion in the comments.